So it's Psalm 55. Give ear to my prayer, O God, and do not hide yourself from my supplication. Attend to me and hear me. I am restless in my complaint and moan noisily, because of the voice of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked. For they bring down the trouble upon me, and in wrath they hate me. My heart is severely pained within me, and the terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fearless and trembling have become upon me, and horror has overwhelmed me. So I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove, I would fly away and be at rest. Indeed, I would wander far off and remain in the wilderness, Selah. I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and tempest. Destroy, O Lord, and divide their towns, for I have seen violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go around it, on its walls. Iniquity and trouble are also in the midst of it. Destruction is in the midst. Oppression and deceit do not depart from its streets. For it is not an enemy who reproaches me, then I could bear it. Nor is it one who hates me, who has exalted himself against me. Then I could hide from him. But it was you, a man my equal, my companion and my acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together and walked to the house of God in the throng. Let death seize them. Let them go down alive into hell, for wickedness is in their dwellings and among them. As for me, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. Evening and morning and at noon I will pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. He has redeemed my soul in peace from the battle that was against me, for there were many against me. God will hear and afflict them, even he who abides from of old, because they do not change. Therefore they do not fear God. He has put forth his hand against those who were at peace with him. He has broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. Cast your burden on the Lord, and he shall sustain you. He shall never permit the righteous to be moved. But you, O God, shall bring them down to the pit of destruction. Bloodthirsty and deceitful men shall not live out half their days, but I will trust in you. May God add his blessing.
According to the heading in the Psalms, it was written when David was on the run from his son Absalom. And the man who took sweet counsel and went to the house of God together with him is likely to have been Bathsheba's grandfather, Ahithophel, who could not forgive what David had done with Bathsheba's husband. Strangely enough, though, her father, Eliab, remained true and loyal to David, even with all the difficulties but Ahithophel, the grandfather, just couldn't see past it. Look. He had the counsel as if God was speaking to you. That's the type of counsel he had. But the root of bitterness can get in, and it can destroy the sweetest of souls if it's not careful. But we'll be looking not so much at that, but the context that David talks about. Oh, that I had wings like a dove, that I might fly away. If we ever said that, just get away from all this, So we'll have a little look at some of the things that David got up to in his younger days and how he struggled with the pressures that he was living with. As good a testimony as David would have had, he still had to make decisions. And sometimes he made bad decisions. And so we'll have a little look at some of the things that he got up to in his younger days. As I said, Psalm 55 really is those one or two verses that come through. I think it's around about verse 7, where he said, oh, that I might have wings like a dove, that I might fly away. To get away from it all, to avoid the windy storm and all the rest of it. In 1 Kings chapter 20, the Syrians are looking to attack Israel. And they've come up with this formula that we leave them alone in the mountains. Israel suffered the consequences for not having metal workers amongst them, it would seem. And so a lot of their wars were like guerrilla-like up in the mountains. And so their God is the God of the hills. He's not the God of the valleys. That's what the Syrian said. He's not the God of the valleys. Well, we know in Wales that he is the God of the valleys. We know that the Lord has moved here, but that word valley there means difficult places. He's not the God of the difficult places. And I wanted just to have a look at a few things that we find in the Old Testament about some valleys. Valleys that some of us are acquainted with, some of them we might not be acquainted with. But there's plenty of valleys that we find in the Old Testament especially. And the one we're most acquainted with is Psalm 23, verse 4. And it talks about the valley of the shadow of death. That's a particular valley. It's not a figment of imagination. It would be an actual valley that they would actually go through. When the shepherd would guide the flock, there would be a moment when he would move from the open plains to get to new pastures. They couldn't always dwell. They were nomadic. And so they couldn't always dwell in one pasture. They'd have to move on. And they would go down into valleys, and there the valleys would be sharp and sheer and everything else, and it would be the perfect position for thief, for robber, for predator to make its attack, either to steal, to rob, or to destroy. The valley of the shadow of death. There's another valley in the Psalms, and it's called the valley of Baca, the valley of tears, or the valley of weeping. It's a valley that you have to go through if you approach Jerusalem from a certain way. It's a valley that you have to go through. And it's called the valley of weeping, or the valley of tears. There's another valley that I remember old Pastor Cooper preached on many, many years ago. It's found in the book of Hosea, chapter 2. And it says there, the valley of Achor, the valley of trouble. And it's taken from the days of Achan when they crossed the Jordan. And Achan stole some goods, some gold, some clothing from the people that lived in Jericho. And it was known as the Valley of Trouble. But even in there, the promise was, I'll give you a door of hope, even in the Valley of Achor. And so there's hope, even in the Valley of Troubles. And then there's another valley, and it's quite a long one, this one, not the valley, but the word, the valley of Penyrheol. And it's the valley of blessing. It's where Jehoshaphat saw that great victory over all those peoples in 2 Chronicles chapter 20. The Lord did an astonishing work in the valley of blessing. We tend to think there that the blessing is coming down on the people, but in actual fact, it's a blessing that goes from the people to God. It has a lovely another name in English besides blessing. It means the valley of the bended knee. When I was writing out the sermon yesterday, your mind can be in two different places. And I was thinking, I'd seen some program, I think, on the history of the Native American, the Red Indian. And I had a book, and it had a wonderful title. It's a fantastic book. It's the book that Dances with Wolves is based on. They Buried My Heart at Wounded Knee. And I wrote in the sermon yesterday, this valley, the valley of Penyrheol, the valley of the wounded knee. But your mind can be in different places at different times, like, you can have a split thinking, like, type of thing. Let's have a look at some of the things that prior to David becoming king, the young man, and he went through some very trying, difficult days, constant pressure. No respite from it at all, day after day after day, over a number of years. And it wore him down. With David, it wore him down to that point where he started to make wrong decisions. Very similar in one sense, we find with Paul, but he didn't make wrong decisions or bad decisions. People look at what he says in the book of Corinthians when he says, when I came amongst you, I came in fear and trembling. Well, why would that be? Well, just go back in the history in the book of Acts of where he'd been. He'd gone to Philippi, he'd had a beating, beating, he'd been in prison, and he's thrown out of the city. He comes to Thessalonica, and they chase him out of Thessalonica. He goes to Berea, and although the success in Thessalonica and Berea is a great success, they force him out of that city as well. Then he makes his way to Athens, and although there were numbers there that came to Christ, they laughed and mocked at him. Now that's constant work, no respite. No one coming up and saying, oh, that was lovely, Paul, that was lovely sermon. People just chasing him out the city. Like he comes to Corinth, and he's there in fear and trembling, so much so that the Lord speaks to him and says, fear not, Paul. I have many people in this city. Be of good cheer. And so the Lord had to reassure him in his... Now, he didn't make the decisions that David made, but what I mean is, it's this point of constant pressure, the toll it takes on you sometimes. And when that pressure is relieved sometimes, you're almost in another world. Like. Well, David, it wasn't always like this. When he first appears, when he first comes on the scene, he comes as a bright-faced young lad that comes along, and he thinks that everyone is in at the deep end. He's gone hook, line, and sinker for the Lord, and he's assuming that everyone is there at the deep end with him. And we find him in one occasion, he's invited to come down from the flock up on the mountain, and he comes into the house, and there's the great prophet Samuel there. And Samuel, as soon as he sees David, it says, Samuel arose, took the horn of oil, and anointed David. And from that day forward, the Lord was with David. It's a lovely testimony to have, isn't there? To have that divine companionship. It doesn't just stop there. Verse 16 goes to say that the Lord was with David. And then chapter 18, verse 12 says, and the Lord was with him. And in later years, when looking back, the Lord looking back on David's life, speaking to him, just at that time when he was looking to build a temple. And the Lord said this to him, I have been with you wherever you have been. What a testimony to have. What a testimony to have. Yet we find that he nigh on crumbled on a number of occasions. People tend to think that, yes, the Lord is with you. And I have to be very, very careful how I say this now. But you're still subject to the decisions that you make. There are occasions when providence, when the goodness of God steps in and saves you from a mess. How many times can we say that down through the years? He saved me from a mess. If I'd gone that way, which is the way I was thinking of going, but because of circumstance, I went another direction, the difference it made. But with David, in those early days, he had this testimony that God was with him. He was a warm character, very winsome character. He had an amazing ability to win people to himself. He had people who were close to him that should never have been close to him. You look at the different ones of his mighty men, and you think, well, how did he get them in there? It's that one man, Ittai, the Gittite. If you're a Gittite, you're from Gath. Now, Goliath was from Gath. And Ittai the Gittite comes out when David's at a low point in his life, later on in his days. And David says, oh, look, I'm on the run. There's pressure's going to come on me and come on you if you come near me. You'll suffer the consequences. Ittai was there with his wife, his family, his children, and his household goods. And he turned and said, I'm with you, David. He had this amazing ability to win people. Uriah the Hittite. A Hittite should never have been in the congregation of Israel. Yet Uriah is there as one of his mighty men. Amazing ability to win people. He could demand loyalty. There are times in a Christian fellowship where a pastor will turn around and say, let's go picking cauliflowers tonight. And the congregation will turn up simply because there's that oneness of spirit. In Romania, in the days when they had communism there and it was breaking down and all the different things going and the churches were being dilapidated. They were there without windows. They were there without walls. And you had members of the congregation taking bricks out of their own walls that they could build into the church. You have this ability, he had this ability to win people and draw people to himself. a winsome character, a warm character, cheeky character. I wondered at times if he would have been like that. And so we see with David, he was also a skillful musician. A skillful musician. There are times I look at David and I think at him and I think in school, we would have had you round the back. Well, whatever he touched, he could do. Like it's a bit like a good friend of ours, Sid Ed. Whatever Sid could do, he could do it. Like no matter what, you don't have to train, you have to practice. He could just do it. Like, oh no, why can't I be something like that? He was mighty and he was valiant, and he had that testimony when he was a teenager. You see, stories began to spill out about David. That he had taken on a bear, he'd taken on a lion for the sake of the flock of sheep that he was looking after. In later years, when he's guarding or he's up in the mountains and in the woods, hiding from Saul, and there were people up there with great flocks of sheep, and David was protecting them. Not one of them was lost. Not one of them was lost when the Philistines and the different tribes were coming over the mountain to steal sheep and cattle or whatever more. He protected them all. This marvelous ability. But this type of testimony, of having a testimony like this, it attracted the evil eye of King Saul. And the jealousy began to grow inside. And Saul began to watch him with that evil eye and make any move that he would make, he would hope that it would be a mistake that David would make. The pressures got so bad that he spoke on one occasion to Saul's son Jonathan. They were like brothers. They were so close together. Jonathan saw no competition in David. He just loved him as he was, and David vice versa. And a day came when he spoke to Jonathan that he said, Jonathan, there is but a step between me and death. If I make one mistake, your dad will have me. Jonathan struggled with it. He said, listen now, I'll go back home and I'll just speak to my dad about what's going on. I'll have a heart-to-heart with him. We'll sit down and we'll talk together, and I'll try to find out exactly what my dad's intending to do. So what we'll do, in 3 days' time, I'll come back to this spot here. And this spot was known as the Rock of Ezer. I'll tell you what it means in just a moment, but you'll know exactly what it means as soon as I tell you what happens there. 3 days later, Jonathan comes back. David has been hiding out in this area, and they meet at the rock called Ezer. And Jonathan tells him, my father is raging, absolutely tamping with you. You have to move on. And the rock Ezer means the rock of separation, the rock of division. I wonder on occasions if David might have passed that way in later years and looked at the rock and thought about what went on at that time. A sad, sad moment. Someone so close, so dear, yet they cannot retain this friendship simply because of the pressures that were coming from above, in the case of Jonathan's father. And they part company. It was a very telling decision that was made. It says that, and David went one way, and Jonathan went back to the city. It says on one occasion concerning the Lord Jesus, I think it's John 7, moving into John 8. And it's on that occasion where Nicodemus stands up for the Lord. And it says there that when they were trying to build evidences against him, Nicodemus stood up and said, look, a man can't be guilty until he's proven guilty. And his governing counselors that he was part of turned on him and drove him into the ground. Like he put his head above the parapet for just a moment. And as soon as he did, he had a earful from those that were around him. And it says that the argument that burst out in the council meeting there at the end of John 7, It said the argument that burst out, it said, and every man went to his own house, and Jesus went up to the Mount of Olives. We see this with David and with Jonathan. We see it with Abraham and Lot. Make your choice. You can go there where everything seems so perfect, or you can go the way that I want you to go. The Lord speaking now. Lot chose that area and he got himself in trouble. A bad decision. Abraham went that way. And everything that Lot saw over there became Abraham's anyhow. But we make decisions sometimes. We put in positions where we have to think things through. Shall I do this? Shall I do that? The impact on David was this. In the next chapter we're told, I think it's chapter 21, verses 1 to 9. It says, and David went to Nob, N-O-B, the city of the priests. And he went to speak to a priest called Ahimelech. And whilst he's there, you can see the impact that it's had on him. He's shaken, badly shaken here. And when he talks to Ahimelech, he lies to him. He lies barefaced to him. And he turns and says to Ahimelech, I'm on a secret mission. And Ahimelech says, what are you doing here? He said, I'm on a secret mission for the king. Then he turns and says, I need some food and I need some weapons. And then he asks the fourth thing. He said, I want you to tell me what the Lord wants me to do. I want you to inquire of God for me. And obviously an answer comes back because of what happens later. An answer comes back. Ahimelech, with the giftings that God has given him as a priest, he is able to find out what God wants for David to do, or what lays ahead for David. And it has an impact upon him, an effect upon him that shakes him to the core. We don't know what's said, but we know in later days, when Saul finds out that David has gone to Ahimelech, he questions him and he says, now, what's this about David coming to see him? And Ahimelech turns to him and he says, but sir, speaking to the king now, this is not the first time that David has come to me to inquire about what God thinks about what he should do. This was quite a normal thing for David to do. He was very conscious. Now remember, they lived in those days where there were prophets, there was Samuel, there were seers, there were priests that had this wonderful ability of being able to bring the mind of God to people's lives. And Ahimelech turns to Saul and he said, well, there's nothing unusual about this. David has come back over the people. This is not the first time. But the effect that it has on David, with the added pressures of losing his closest friend Jonathan, it puts pressure on him to make a decision that's a bad decision. Because we read then that as we go on in verse 10, that it says, and David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. That's a strange decision to make, isn't it? Gath is Philistine country. Why would he leave his homeland, the land of his fathers? Why would he go to a place where he knew he was hated? He's the one that conquered Gath in the valley of Elah, another valley. He conquered Gath. He conquered Goliath in the valley of Elah. And he's despised. When David is later on made king, they say that the Philistines came to search for him, to capture him. They knew if they could get David out of the way, then Israel was theirs then for the taking. They despised David. They hated him. And so David makes this decision, a strange decision. He goes to Achish, king of Gath. We make decisions like that sometimes, see? Make decisions. When we're on that downward road and we start making decisions, the church don't love me. I don't fit in like I used to. And you begin to get involved with groups or friends or an individual that perhaps is not going to do you any good. But the strangest thing is that you've gone there. You've gone there for a way of escape. And David is there now in Philistia, in the city of Gath, with Achish, the king of Gath. And he's there. And he suddenly realized the mistake he's made. And he changes his behavior. That's what we do when we go away from the Lord. We change our behavior. We begin to fit in with what the world thinks. We begin to do what the world does. And so David changes his behavior. He comes to the point where it almost seems that it's a nervous breakdown at hand. It says he begins to dribble and scratch the door. He's scribbling on the doors. And his behavior has changed. And the worst thing of all is that the Philistines now are mocking him. Even the king turns around and says to those around him, his counselors said, well, why bring me a madman? What can I do with him? And David's life, his testimony, it seems, is completely ruined. And so it says there in the following chapter that David escapes again. In chapter, 22, David escaped and came to Adullam. You can hear him, can't you, singing that psalm if it was written. It wasn't written at this point. Oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then I'd fly away and be at rest. Lo, then I'd wander off and remain in the wilderness and hasten my escape from the windy storm. You ever felt like that? You ever felt like that? Just to get away from it all, just for a moment. I've known times before when I've gone away from Caerphilly and the pressure's off. You come back in from Caerphilly. I remember coming back from Mallorca, just me and Jude went when the kids were able to stay at home by themselves, and we came back into the street, to the troubles of the street, and I could feel my spirit dropping straight away. And yet when you go out from Caerphilly, you didn't feel that pressure. Over there in Mallorca, everything was dandy. But coming back, you feel the pressures come out, the problems that families were having in the street. Not in church out, but in the street. Just 2 or 3 families moved in and turned the street upside down in one sense. A place where you'd love to live. You wouldn't want to move. But in a short time, we would begin looking to move out of the street. And so we find here David, oh, that I had wings like a dove, that I could just get out of this place. I've got to escape Saul. I've got to escape the pressures. I can't live as a loner, without Jonathan, without friends, without family, without company. And so it says in chapter 22, it says, and David escaped to a place called Adullam. It was a cave in actual fact. His brothers and his father's house came to him, and so did many that were in distress, in debt, and discontented. There's a group of people to have with you, isn't it? You know, they're quite a motley crew, like those that were in distress, those that were in debt, and those who were discontented. Adullam means this: rest. Out of all that pressure, he found a place where he could rest. Sometimes when you come in to the house, I remember Roger saying years ago, when you come in through the front door, shut the front door, and if me and him had a fringe, we'd have a little fringe that would go up as we go. There's that time when you have that rest. And for David, Adullam meant that for him. A place of rest. Have you got a place of rest? Have you got a place where you can just relax? Have peace. Elvis Presley sang it, didn't he? There will be peace in the valley. And other gospel singers have sung it. Peace in the valley. What I find astonishing, and the whole point of going through all these difficult times and these valleys that David went into, is that at this time, he was able to write 3 psalms. Psalm 34, Psalm 56, and Psalm 57. And it is astonishing what has happened within his heart. Both 56 and 57 start with these same words. Be merciful unto me, O God. Be merciful unto me. You see, restoration always starts with repentance. It always starts at that place where you come to the Lord and you see the mistakes. You acknowledge the wrongs, the frustrations that are there, the sin that has gone on within the heart, whatever it be that has taken you away from him, it brings you back to that place where you say, be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me. And he writes, now this is a man that has changed his behavior, that has lost his testimony in one sense. He feels completely mocked and derided. And he's making his way back to Adullam, and as he comes back to Adullam, he's able to rest a little while, and he's in company now because his father's house and his brothers are there, and this crew of people that have come, about 400 strong, of people that were in debt, people that were discontent, and people, I forgot the other one, what the other one was. There's another D, I think it was. And so David is there. Listen to what he writes. This is Psalm 56, verse 1. Man would swallow me up. Daily he oppresses me. He's already said, be merciful to me, Lord. Man would swallow me up. Daily he oppresses me. Verse 3 and 4 says this. When I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, I will praise his word. In God, I have put my trust. I will not be afraid what man can do to me. That's astonishing. Astonishing what he could say. Here's a man that had been on the run. A man that had lied to the priest. A man that had gone to the enemy camp in one sense just to find some respite and was there mocked for his efforts. His testimony has dwindled to that degree. He feels so guilty within that as he is there making his way to Adullam, it's clear that the Lord is dealing with him. And you can be in the deepest of valleys, the deepest of valleys. You can be in the deepest of difficult places. And somehow, some way, the providence of God is able to step in. So that you're able to call and say, be merciful to me, O Lord. Be merciful unto me. Man daily oppresses me. He's fighting with me all the time. But now when I'm afraid, I'll trust in you. In God I will praise his word. In God I will praise his name. And I won't be afraid what man can do to me. It's astonishing change that takes place. But Psalm 57 goes further. It's written about the time when he's actually in the cave. And it says this. Be merciful unto me, O God, be merciful unto me. My soul trusts in you. In the shadow of your wings I make my refuge. We have that, don't we? Was it Psalm 91? He that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge. He is my strength. He is my tower. That's Psalm 91. But here we have this now. I trust in the shadow of your wings. Verse 7 says this. My heart is fixed, O God. My heart is fixed. My heart is steadfast. I'm not budging from this ever again. I'm fixed now, Lord. I'm fixed. I will sing and give praise to you. Those Old Testament valleys that we spoke about, the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? Because you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The valley of tears that he's been through, the valley of weeping that he's made his way along life's journey, and suddenly the Lord has stepped in. The valley of troubles, surely a door of hope has opened up now in the valley of troubles. Now the valley of Berechah, the valley of the bended knee, where a victory has come, where simply David have said, I yield myself to you. My heart is fixed, O God. My heart is fixed. Talks about the double mind, doesn't it? Talks about the double heart. But here David has one heart that is fixed on the Lord alone. I yield myself to you. You want to see how much he's changed? Remember I told you about that man, Ahimelech, the priest? When he was interviewed by Saul, Saul didn't believe him. And the king turned and said to his servants, slay him and all the priests. But the servants stood back. They wouldn't touch him. There was a man there that was willing to do the dirty deed. His name was Doeg. Just one of all the priests escaped. He was the son of Ahimelech. His name was Ahitub. I'm sorry about all the names, but they become personal to you. His name was Ahitub. And it says, he escaped and came to David. And he showed David all that Saul had done in killing the priests. And this is what David said. Ahitub, abide with me. Do not be afraid. He that seeks my life seeks your life. But with me, you shall be safe. What a marvelous testimony to have, isn't it? Here's an individual that didn't feel safe. But now he's a refuge himself. So that his father's house come to him. His brothers come to him. Those that were discontented, they come to him. Ahitub comes to him. And he says, Ahitub, with me, you'll be safe. You'll be safe. The New Living Translation puts it like this. I will protect you with my life. What a wonderful change can take place in the soul of a person that has walked with the Lord, that had this testimony that the Lord has been with him, but still has made wrong decisions with the pressures that have been applied. And now, with his testimony, with his conscience, with his confidence restored, he becomes a shelter. He becomes someone that people can take refuge in. That he's no longer taking now, he's giving now. He's no longer seeking now, he's beginning to embrace now. And so we find with this David, it's a marvelous thing that you can be a refuge in a desert. You can be an oasis. You can be a blessing. What a wonderful thing it is for the Lord to reign supreme in your life. Listen, are you in the valley of the bended knee? That valley where you see how great God is and you yield. What had happened in that valley? There had been an incredible battle, but the Lord had sustained them and saw them through. And now we find with this that their hearts were blessing God. It wasn't the case that he was blessing them. He'd already blessed them. They are blessing him now. That's where David is here. He's in that valley of the bended knee.